It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise we aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.
I can't see forever, but I know that it's there.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Hedwig and the Angry Inch is over. My God, I deserve a break today.
Ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not.
Ow!
Hedwig!
Don't you know me, Kansas City? I'm the new Berlin Wall. Try and tear me down.
How did some slip of a girly boy become the internationally ignored song stylist barely standing before you?
Damn, handsome. I can't believe you're not a girl.
Looks like we got some sugar daddies in the house. You could give me a cavity, honey.
Now you're interested, huh?
Inch, not itch.
Intrigue. It is clear that I must find my other half. But is it a he or a she? Can two people actually become one?
Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Andy, I worry a little bit that I like this movie more than you.
Okay. And where are you coming from? Talk to me about this.
I don't know. I feel like the movie is possibly a little bit all over the place. Possibly there is underdevelopment of some core character motivation stuff that you're going to point at, and you might be right about all those things. And I think that as a musical, you maybe don't truck with all the music. Is any of that on the nose?
Well, I actually really like the music throughout this film.
Good. Okay.
I really enjoyed it.
That's really.
I just was like, what a weird little thing to have happened in this series to end up with two musicals that just give us a real fun sense of the era, kind of the early aughts and the quirky musicals that we ended up getting at the time. So I enjoyed the nature of that. It's an interesting story. I do enjoy it. You probably do like it more than me, but I liked it more than I did when I first saw this. When I first saw it in around the time it came out. I thought it was an interesting first film. I didn't completely click with it. And I still have some issues with kind of the way the story, the way it unfolds. But what I ended up gravitating to this time was kind of the character journey that Hedwig goes on. Even if I don't fully understand the full arc of Hedwig's journey, but I did find myself enjoying that more.
So let's talk just a bit about what the film is about, because there's a lot going on in an hour and 26 minutes. Like, it's a short movie, and as such, I find it really propulsive. Like, it moves very, very quickly. It's about Hedwig, who is East German singer of a fictional rock band, and Hedwig is in search of, love and identity, and through a moment of, I think that just that search, weakness, a moment of enthusiasm, meets an American soldier, American army soldier, who offers Hedwig a chance out of East Germany. And as a result says, I can take you, but, you want to present as a woman, and they're going to do a physical. And so, they're going to find out that you're not. So they take him to an East German Hedwig. They take him, Hedwig, to an East German doctor.
Hansel at the time.
Hansel, you're right. Hansel at the time. And the surgery is
botched,
not successful. Right. Which leads to one of the great songs, 6 inches forward, 5 inches back. Right. Which is, and it leaves now Hedwig with a 1 inch nubbin, the angry inch, after which he then names the band. And that sort of, I think that struggle with figuring out, like, the lengths to which Hansel then Hedwig goes to figure out who they are in the world and where they belong is what is interesting to me. Like, the level of sort of pain and enthusiasm, and the way it presents on stage versus the way it presents, off stage, I think is a really interesting look at character. And to have this movie come out in 2001, it was ahead of its time. Arguably, could have been made in 1971 too.
Actually, couldn't have been, because the Berlin Wall was not taken down yet.
Well, that's a good. You have a good point. Speaking only
but
culturally,
89. But 89, sure.
89. Let's go 89. 91. So anyway, so I really like it because of that journey, and because of the fascinating things, little things that are fascinating, like the fact that Hansel's mom chose East Germany, right? That because East Germany, what was her line? It was like, she had this wonderful line about how, everybody should be essentially basic, right? Everybody should be equally basic, and then we won't have any struggles. And I thought that was just such an interesting model around the people who wanted to be on that side of the wall. Given from our perspective in the West, why would you ever choose that if you knew better? And here she had this. She had visibility of both. She had visibility of her husband, who, she tossed out, and then chose the East. And I thought that was really interesting.
Well, tossed out because he was molesting a child.
Yeah, no, he was not great.
Yeah, it wasn't just like, I'm done with you, get out. There's a little more. Yeah,
that's fair. That is a fair correction. Context does matter.
Context, yeah. So, and so I suppose there's an interesting element to that world and growing up on that side of the wall, and that's definitely an interesting element to have a story about a gay character, a queer character who is raised there in a place that it's probably a lot more challenging on that side of the wall, Mm-hmm. But what I found interesting with that is it wasn't like mom was trying to stop it, like she saw him dancing in his room and wasn't bothered by the fact that he was dancing in his room, but was just like, like that wasn't a problem. It's just like it was the fact that it was in his room and it was a little too much for her to take. So she's like, just do it inside the oven.
Yes.
Like you're taking up too much space with that. Just the oven's fine.
Uh-huh.
Which, I mean, I suppose, in the comedy sense, it makes for a funny bit when you see Hedwig having to spend all this time with his head in the oven just to have his own little world. But also she like understood, like, you're going to have to give something up if you want to leave, and like was part of the motivation to actually go through the reassignment surgery. And so there were interesting elements with that I just was not kind of expecting to come from Mom,
Yeah.
It wasn't painting her as this hateful parent who just didn't understand. It wasn't a perfect family, but I did find that to be quite interesting. And, she's certainly, when she finds out that Hansel's getting molested, works to stop that. So a lot of interesting elements there, but it does set up an interesting story to watch Hansel try to figure himself out and then figure herself out after going through the reassignment surgery and ending up in Kansas and basically as like this housewife. And I don't know, it's an interesting element that I found I enjoyed a lot with, especially as we kind of get it told through the animation, but the idea of identity and this bifurcation of who we are and the man versus the woman, and that story. It's in that song. I think it was Origin of Love. Is that the song where it's like the blob of like a person, but it's like, all one and then getting split. And just like this whole concept was so interesting, the way that they were portraying it. And that's for me what ended up working well on this watch, even though I don't think I fully, not exactly sure where we get by the time the film ends, but the fact that Hedwig has that tattoo of the split. I don't know. It's almost like a yin yang image, but of people. I'm not exactly sure how you would describe it, but it's like broken. It's the two halves, the two identities that Hedwig is contending with. And then by the time we get to the end, it is one unified image.
Yeah, it's just a face.
That was kind of the journey I enjoyed watching for Hedwig, even though I'm not like, I guess I wasn't sure what we're seeing with the end, because Hedwig, it seemed like kind of had to lose her identity and revert to the more masculine portrayal, so I wasn't sure what John Cameron Mitchell was saying with the way that the film ended. And then his wife, I guess by that point, is he back to he, him pronouns? I'm not exactly sure where we go by the time we get to the end, but Hedwig's husband, Yitzhak, is finally able to finish their transition and becomes the beautiful woman that we see at the end, and Hedwig is kind of back to the more masculine looking role. And so it looks like, I'm not sure, I guess I wasn't sure. Was it just a journey for Hedwig to figure out, what am I in this world? I mean, so that's, I think, it's just a little head scratching for me at the end with that final bit.
I see your head scratching, and I also think you did figure it out. Like, to me, what you just described, ending with a question mark, you should just end with a period, because the whole movie is about, to me, is about that searching for identity, and the end of the movie is, this is the sort of the performance of Midnight Radio, which is a wonderful, wonderful song, and provides such a metaphor for self-discovery and that message to the world, and removing the wig and the makeup and all the feminine clothing and revealing this true self as masculine and feminine, not one, not the other, just this one sort of union, as the animation kind of rebuilds that split face into one, I think is the point. Like, the point of Hedwig shedding external persona, which was there to help guide a really complex acceptance of identity, help guide that journey, and then realize maybe we don't need the complex like external identity. We don't need the trappings of Hedwig to find who we are. And you know, maybe the end of the movie, maybe sort of Hedwig 2 is Hedwig donning all the persona again, but by choice, not by necessity. And I think that's what I think the movie really says. It's a movie about shedding past grief and past trauma and letting go of the Tommy Gnosis frustrations and letting go of the, you know, I mean, when he offers the wig to Yitzhak, right, to become who she wants to be, it just ends up being a journey toward wholeness for everybody. And I think it's really lovely.
No, that's actually okay. So then I feel better about it now. It's also interesting though, because when we get to that final sequence, it almost feels like we've entered a dream space. And so I wasn't sure if that was, if it's the dream space that we're trying to get to, or if we get to it, and maybe that doesn't matter because it's the realization of it, you know, and then because it's all white and so it feels very much, there's a kind of this primordial sense to it. Before that, there's kind of this moment of forgiveness in this dream space with Tommy, and all of it feels very, I don't know where my head goes, which isn't exactly anywhere right for this, but it's that depiction of, I think it was heaven in that Danny Boyle movie with Ewan McGregor, A Life Less Ordinary, where it's like heaven, and that's where Holly Hunter and Delroy Lindo are like angels, and they're in complete white. But it's like, that's where my head goes. Like, it's all white. It's heaven. It must be heaven.
Right.
But anyway, and then it's like, I guess it's an interesting rebirth, because we have Hedwig completely naked now with that tattoo, the new tattoo on his butt, walking through an alley, like a very dark alley, and then kind of disappearing into the darkness, almost like going off into being born again as the new version of Hedwig. It's an interesting way to kind of take the film to end it, because it does kind of give you that sense. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I think you just described the end exactly the same way I saw it too. Him walking down that long alley, and it's framed perfectly. It is like, you just get the sense of rebirth, like of freedom, right? Of being able to have shed everything and be the person that they want to be and that they need to be in the universe. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting when you get to that point after just an hour and 26 minutes.
Well, I mean, you know, I think it's valuable to remember that films don't have to be 2+ hours long.
They sure don't, isn't
Not
it?
that I have a problem with length. Like, I generally don't mind long films. Like, I'm totally fine with it.
Right.
But I do think that it helps when it's making sense for the context of the story. I think, you know, a lot of films can be tighter, but this one felt fine. It felt nice. It did make me wonder, in the scope of an off-Broadway play from which it was based, was that also as short? Because I feel like when it's a musical or play, my head always goes to 3 hours. I don't know if that's always the case, but it always feels like
they're longer.
You know, first act, intermission, second act, and it always feels long. And so, I don't know. I guess I've never seen it. I do know that they cut a few musical numbers and some plot elements out of this to kind of keep it tighter. Like, there was a whole thread with Yitzhak preparing for the audition in Rent. Also, there's more about how he met Hedwig in a Croatian drag bar. I like that Yitzhak was once a drag queen called Crystal Nacht, which I think is very funny. And there was also a whole bit that sounds really silly about the manager had a cell phone surgically implanted in her tooth. And that was like a whole bit that was, I don't know, it sounds, I'm not exactly sure. I can see why they likely ended up cutting that.
Yes.
So,
yeah, for sure.
But I mean, have you ever seen a version of the actual musical before?
No, I've never seen the musical, but I have watched many clips, and not of the original Off-Broadway, but some years ago when it was when it went to Broadway with Neil Patrick Harris in the role of Hedwig, and they released the full soundtrack, and he did a bunch of stuff. He did Sugar Daddy on the Tonys. Like you can see him. There are a bunch of like you want to see him do the Broadway version of Midnight Radio at the end and see how he performs that, and how they reveal Yitzhak at the end is just lovely. I mean, it's really neat. So those are available. I knowing the context of the film makes it easier to put some of those clips together, but I just am a fan of the music. So it's easy to check out.
Yeah, Stephen Trask and John Cameron Mitchell were the two behind the play. Stephen Trask is in the film also as one of the bandmates, whose name I can't say. Is it Skizip? SKSZP.
I've never heard it said. I've always just said Skizip.
Not exactly sure. It does make me laugh. And Stephen Trask is a composer who's done a lot of stuff and has been, just around for quite a while doing film scores, but has also been involved in a number of musicals. So, but John Cameron Mitchell, first film out of the gate, this, had taken the musical that he and Trask wrote and submitted this to Sundance Film Labs, and kind of worked on all of that there to kind of get it made. First film, though, I mean, looking at this, not just as a director making a first film, but also lead role, like big role. I mean, what do you think of John Cameron Mitchell, not only helming this from the director's point of view, the writer's point of view, but also the star?
Yeah, I legit can't believe it. And to play a character like an East German character that is able to go back and forth between managing accents and singing voice and all these things in a way that is just so believable to me. Like it just reads to me like a guy who knew exactly the movie that needed to be made and just never it feels like an effortless amalgam of all the things that you just mentioned in a way that is so competent, so supremely competent. I'm kind of blown away by the craft of the story and the movie and the music and putting it all together in a way that is so satisfying as a first thing.
It's mind-boggling. I love when I see a first feature that feels like there's such a vision behind it, like somebody who knew all of the ins and outs, the look of it, the feel of it, the way the performances were going to ring. Like it even just capturing some beautiful scenes and shots throughout. When Hedwig steps into the limo and you get this incredibly wide angle shot. It's a stretch limo and the camera's on the far end of the limo, and looking at them across, it just makes this space huge of this limo with them at the far end in this little tiny space. It's just like those sorts of shots. It's just such creativity put into the story that it's fascinating to see. And it does make me regret and realize I need to catch up on Mitchell's other films like Short Bus, Rabbit Hole, and How to Talk to Girls at Parties. I've missed all of those, but now I'm really curious to check them out.
Me too. And I sort of can't believe I haven't seen any of these, especially How to Talk to Girls at Parties. I mean, A24. Come on, man. We're not doing the work.
That and Rabbit Hole, both with Nicole Kidman. I just like that we talked about this a little bit in our member pre-show chat. She is somebody who I genuinely find interesting because she ends up taking a lot of interesting roles like these.
Yeah. Yeah. He's an interesting, really interesting guy. And I mean, born in Texas, he's a Texan playing an East German trans rock singer. Great performance.
Yitzhak was the surprise for me because every time I looked at Yitzhak, I'm like, okay, there's something weird going on
Funny.
with Yitzhak. What am I? And I'm like, I think it's a woman. I'm pretty sure that's a woman. And then, of course, by the time you get to the end, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. It's Miriam Shore plays Yitzhak. And it's very fun to kind of see her in the role essentially as another trans, Hedwig's spouse, who is also going through a transition, and like when like still very much a masculine look with the beard and everything, but very high pitched voice. So I was already going through a lot of the changes that we finally get to see at the end. But I enjoyed the story that we have with Yitzhak and Miriam. I thought was you worked well in the part, and just this struggle of a relationship when your spouse is the focal point of the band, and clearly there was some on stage fighting about who wants more spotlight, and Yitzhak several times seemed to be kind of trying to sing a little louder or be a little more prominent, and Hedwig, like, it just I enjoyed the way we were getting some of that infighting of their relationship on stage. It was I don't know, it made for an interesting element of the story.
I think so too. It was a neat relationship, and that, just how effortless again it was to build the animosity between their relationship in such short sequences. One, using the music, using their stage dynamic to present the fact that their relationship is on the rocks. Really clever. They didn't have to resort to dialogue or expository scenes to tell us how terrible their relationship was getting. And the opening sequence, right? Like we have that opening where Yitzhak is sitting on the bed and kind of caressing the wig, and they have a sort of terse conversation in the very beginning that sort of sets off this chain of relationship struggle. I thought it was really, really good. Did you catch that Miriam Shore was just in American Fiction?
Yeah, right. I
Crazy.
I couldn't tell you which character that was in it. I'm assuming it was somebody in one of the readings or something like that. But yeah, I did see that, and also in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I know, Recorder Vim. Who was Recorder Vim?
Yeah, again, I would need to watch those movies again to pinpoint her, but it's nice to see. And yeah, it was a part of the movie that I enjoyed, and just an interesting element of a relationship. I mean, relationships are complex enough, but then you have a relationship between two trans characters who are also fighting about kind of like who's going to take what kind of role in her relationship.
Yeah.
And that builds to the end. And I thought that was an interesting bit of the story.
Me too.
We haven't talked about Tommy Gnosis a whole lot, but Michael Pitt plays Tommy. This is a boy who Hedwig meets in Kansas from a religious family, and the conversations. I love the moment where he asks Hedwig, have you welcomed Jesus into your heart and soul? And Hedwig is like, or I can't remember, but he's just like, no, but I haven't, but I love his work.
It's outstanding.
Yeah.
Michael Pitt was interesting. There were two actors in here that obviously I knew from other stuff, and Michael Pitt is one of them. Michael Pitt in particular, because on Sitting in the Dark, we had just done, this was some months ago, we did a series on home invasion movies, and Michael Pitt is in the remake of Funny Games, the 2007 remake of Funny Games, and is diabolical. So it was really fascinating to see Michael Pitt at this point in his career being already kind of the Michael Pitt that I knew from, Seven Psychopaths and Funny Games. Like, he's just a really interesting character on screen. It's fascinating to watch this guy work.
Yeah, Michael Pitt is an interesting actor that I feel like I first saw, maybe I don't know if first, but was one of those actors who, it was right after this. It was Murder by Numbers, the one with Sandra Bullock, where she's a detective trying to figure out who's killing people, and it's like these two teenagers that she's kind of figured out, him and Ryan Gosling, and it was an interesting story. I don't know if I completely loved it, but I felt like there were some interesting elements, particularly with the depiction of the kids, and Pitt was one of them. And that's where I always go first with Pitt, who, of course, then I've seen in plenty of other things like The Village. He was in that. I missed that version of the Funny Games, but I remember that he was in it, and like Ghost in the Shell, like, really interesting actor that I generally enjoy, although I guess I haven't seen as many things as I thought.
Well, his performance here, I think, is really interesting. Being able to kind of walk that line between the guy who, the young kind of ingenue love interest to Hedwig, to becoming the megastar, having, taken the music of Hedwig and made it massive, right? That's sort of the undercurrent of the entire movie, is that Hedwig is suing Tommy Gnosis for stealing his music. And because relatively nobody knows Hedwig, everybody believes Tommy, and they're just trying to stage some sort of a photo opportunity or something to get Hedwig and Tommy together to prove they know each other. And that journey of Gnosis is actually really interesting, because it starts from this kind of, we meet him first when he's the megastar, then we flash back and get his early days with Hedwig, and then we get a reconciliation as a result of the tabloid exposure of their car accident. And it ends up being, I think, a really interesting arc to give Hedwig to check a box of reconciliation, leading to, again, that rebirth at the end. This is one of the things that has to be done, and they do it in a way that's pretty elegant narratively.
Yeah, I think that it plays well, and I think Pitt plays that character in a way that works. Like, from that particular Christian background, there's an element of that discomfort with what Hedwig represents, but still this draw to it and to whatever it is inside of himself that he's contending with. And I find that to be interesting, and inevitably kind of a sad story of a person who can't come to terms with that and pushes it away. And then, of course, it ends up biting him as we get to that tabloid story. And it seems like his career is probably going to fall apart after that, as people are finding him less interesting from that point on. So,
but also gives us that sense of like, there's that other little notch that's like, look how, in addition to how fragile careers can be, right, in the strict eyes, or sort of the judging eyes of the media, also the weight of guilt, right? Because it is Gnosis who writes in Sharpie the new credit on the back of his CD to credit Hedwig. It's all, that entire thing is done without any dialogue. I mean, it's just him performing, picking up the Sharpie, writing on the CD. And you might think like they could easily have gone the route of like, oh, he's just autographing a CD for Hedwig, right? Let's really stick the shiv in. But in fact, this is his what do they call it when you go into the box and say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned"?
Confession.
This is his confession.
Yeah.
I should know that word better.
It plays in an interesting way. Like, we get a really interesting element in that kind of side of Tommy that,
yeah,
in the end, it's not Tommy's story, it's Hedwig's, but it does make me wonder, like, will Tommy ever be able to find or make those two halves of his invisible identity that he has fused into one,
Yeah, was this the same kind of turning point for him that it was for Hedwig, as it turns out,
Right. Yeah. I mean, theoretically it was, because we, at least in that fantasy space that we're in at the end, that, that heaven where the two of them meet up on stage, and there is kind of that moment of forgiveness, but that part of me feels like that's just Hedwig's need for that, and getting it in her own way to be able to like have closure on the Tommy part of her life.
Yeah, right. This leads us to Andrea Martin as the manager.
Yes, I largely think of her. I mean, she's one of those faces that's very, very familiar, but I think I'm most I don't know what this says, but she's the aunt in the My Big Fat Greek Wedding movies, and that's where my brain goes with her.
I guess that doesn't really surprise me, but I guess a little bit it does because of her role in both the Black Christmas movies, the original and the remake. And we talked about Black Christmas, and that was the first credit that I noticed.
Who was she in? Now I can't remember who she was in that. Was she like the house mom or something?
She was Phil. She was the house mom in the remake of it.
Okay.
But she was in the 1971 version. She's
just a sorority member.
Sorority member,
and she gets killed. Okay.
She does.
That's interesting. I want to revisit that now to see her in that.
Right?
Yeah.
As a very young Andrea Martin getting killed by a faceless POV killer. It's a delight.
Wow. She also was a waiting room patient in Inner Space. She's one of the people who watches Martin Short freaks out when he's like, I'm possessed. Yeah. I remember her now, having recently covered that in a previous series this season. I do remember that.
She's very funny, Andrea Martin. I think she's a wonderful comic actress. If you ever watch the TV series Difficult People, that is the other show that I kind of think about her in, and that's it's for some people, I think it's hard to watch. It is such a cynical show. It's Billy Eichner and Julie Klausner, and they're not likable in any way, shape, or form. But I find that kind of humor very, very funny, and she was in it, and Andrea Martin is in it, and she's really great. So if you like their brand of comedy, it's a really interesting thing, and it showcases just how funny she can be and how dry, so dry.
Definitely one of those people who dances a lot between film and TV and the Broadway stage.
A lot. Yeah,
and she, started in SCTV, so definitely has that comedy element quite a bit. And she's fun in the movie. I do enjoy her. She's the perfect character to play kind of the manager who's like that one cheerleader that they have in all of these little diners where they're singing, just like trying to get the crowd to get into it. She was a lot of fun in this. Yeah,
totally. I love that their world tour is through the Bilchford or whatever the name of the diner is. It's just the same diner in different cities, which cracks me up. That's their world tour. Really, really funny.
Bilgewater, yeah. Which I don't know if they say it, but it's according to the synopsis, it's a chain of failing seafood restaurants. That's just perfect. Very, very funny.
And it seems to be, I could never quite understand this, but there is a sequence where they talk about where Gnosis is playing, and it's as if they're scheduling their world tour around Gnosis's tour spots, and they're just trying to get the diner as close to the event as they can.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a strategy.
I know. It's very funny. Very funny.
Yeah.
This is here because of the cinematography as far as our series here. Frank G. DeMarco is the cinematographer for the film. In the scope of what is how it works for the film, what do you think of the cinematography?
Well, probably predictably, I really like it. I think it goes back and forth between handling the musical numbers in confined weird spaces in this failing seafood restaurants to handling the really sort of gritty 70s vibe of Hedwig in the offstage sequences that I think is quite lovely, right? I mean, it's the film, the texture of the film, it's noisy, it's grainy, there's light leakage. There are some things going on in here that make it really, damn near artful and not just presenting the wacko character on stage. And I just will shout out, Emily Hubley did the animation sequences, and I think they are really neat the way they interact with the narration. There is some narration with the story, the camera, the music. I think it becomes a real storytelling element in the film, and I think it's great.
I like the animation a lot. I think that it is, right out of the gate, we get the title in that fantastic animation style that kind of sets us up for what we're going to see with it as it continues. I just enjoy the animation a lot. As for the cinematography, you definitely liked it more than I did. I think it was fine. I think it works for kind of creating like some of the concert spaces and stuff like that. It works best in concert with the framing and elements that I pair often with the direction anyway, like when that limo shot I brought up earlier. So for me, the cinematography was fine, but it didn't wow me as much as something like The American Astronaut did. Like I think that it worked, but I didn't. I guess I was surprised when I rewatched this. I'm like, okay, nominated for best cinematography. I guess it didn't stand out as much. Like I was thinking about other films that were nominated. Last week we were talking about other films that also were nominated for the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance. And like Donnie Darko popped up, and I'm like, well, I feel like I liked the cinematography better in that than this,
Yeah. Well, I mean, as soon as you drop The American Astronaut, I'm going to say, yeah, The American Astronaut was better. Like, I liked it. I thought it was really great in Hedwig for what Hedwig is, but that it didn't win doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's it. So we'll be right back, but first our credits.
The next reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by OK Otter, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
I wish she was sitting next to me. It's been almost 30 years, and I miss her to death.
We have discussed so many fantastic movies on the next reel over the years, and Pete, I've got to say, I've been itching to revisit 2001: A Space Odyssey again, one of the all-time greats.
Or maybe Moneyball instead, Yeah, but hold up. Before you hit that rental button, check out the Next Reel's watch page. It's your one-stop shop for Apple and Amazon links to all the movies we've discussed in all 13 seasons of this show, including those we have yet to discuss in our current season.
Wow, how convenient. So we can easily watch the movies that we rave about on the show using those links?
Absolutely. Plus, by using those links to rent or purchase movies, Apple and Amazon show us a little bit of love, which allows you to support the show with minimal effort.
Talk about a win-win.
That's right. Head over to thenextreel.com/watch.
That's thenextreel.com/watch to pick out your next movie and start watching today.
Okay. Sequels and remakes.
Well, as we mentioned, it did start Off-Broadway, but I don't know that, but really maybe this kind of pushed it to turn into something that had quite a run. It went from Off-Broadway in 98, played in the West End in 2000, West End Revival 2004, UK Tour 2005, Broadway in 2014, and then US Tour 2016. So from Off-Broadway and then this film, it's had quite a run.
It has had quite a run. And again, go watch the clips of Neil Patrick Harris doing this part. He's great, 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 great as Hedwig. Really wonderful Hedwig.
Yeah.
And the Broadway cast recording came out in 2014, and it's everywhere you stream your music, and it's a wonderful soundtrack.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're here because of the that one particular award that neither of us thinks it should have won for, but it did get some nod elsewhere.
It did. It had 28 wins with 33 other nominations. At the Film Independent Spirit Awards, the reason we're here, it was nominated for Best Feature but lost to Memento. Likewise, Mitchell was nominated for Best Director but lost to Christopher Nolan for Memento. Mitchell was nominated for Best Male Lead, but lost to Tom Wilkinson in The Bedroom. Also was nominated for Best First Screenplay, but lost to Daniel Close and Terry Zwigoff for Ghost World. And, of course, Best Cinematography was nominated, but lost to Peter Deming in Mulholland Drive. It did open at Sundance, nominated for the Grand Jury Prize, but as we've discussed a bunch in this season, or in this series, it lost to the Ryan Gosling neo-Nazi movie, The Believer. It did, however, win Audience Award for Best Dramatic Film and Directing Award for Dramatic Film. As far as its cinematography, I couldn't find it getting another nomination for its cinematography, but it did get 3 wins at what are called the Glitter Awards, which I hadn't heard of before, and I'm a little unsure about the categories, but I thought I would just go with them. It won the Best Feature voted by the U.S. Gay Press. It won the Best Feature voted by the U.S. Gay Film Festivals. And it won Best Feature voted by the U.S./International Gay Film Festivals and Gay Press. Now, it feels like they're kind of combining all those categories, like it won for the gay press and also for the U.S. and international gay press, and then like the gay film festivals, and then again for the gay film. Like, it feels like, are these real categories? I thought it was very strange, but I'm like, okay, you go Glitter Awards.
The Glitter Awards have led to a real tabloid scandal here at the Next Reel. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
Indeed, yes.
Okay, how about at the box office? Does a little movie like Hedwig make any money?
Well, Mitchell's film had a surprisingly large budget for an indie film of $6 million, or $10.7 million in today's dollars. Like the rest of the movies in this series thus far, it premiered at Sundance 2001 before its limited release July 20th, 2001, opposite America's Sweethearts and Ghost World. It never played on more than 101 screens, going on to earn $3.1 million domestically and $668,000 internationally for a total gross of $6.7 million in today's dollars. That landed the film with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $42.4 thousand. But it has gone on to find its audience, has become quite a cult hit, not to mention a big success, as we've said, on Broadway.
I'm so glad we got this movie on the list. Whatever excuse it took to get this movie, I'm really glad it's here. It's got the soundtrack in rotation in our house again, and it just belongs in a conversation on a show that has also done Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and Transamerica. It's about time we have Hedwig on the list.
Yeah, I'm glad to have returned to it because I just don't remember liking it much when I first saw it. And so, again, as I've said a number of times, it definitely pays to revisit movies sometimes because you find more to kind of click with them.
Yeah.
It's not something I'm going to put on often, but I did find it to be a pretty interesting and compelling watch.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll be right back for our ratings, but first here's the trailer for next week's movie closing out our series, David Lynch's Mulholland Drive. I'm very curious about that one because after hearing you talking about it on City in the Dark, I'm like, maybe Pete doesn't like this one.
It's been so long since I've seen it. So long.
I can't believe it. I'm just so excited to be here. I'm in this dream place.
This one comes highly recommended.
Dream place. What are you doing?
Get out of the car.
Yes. The girl is still missing.
What's wrong? I don't know who I am. I wonder where you were going. Mulholland Drive. Come on, it'll be just like in the movies. We'll pretend to be someone else.
This is all an illusion.
You want to know who you are, don't you?
Where's this going?
Mulholland Drive.
It's been a very strange day.
Getting stranger.
Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Letterboxd, Andy. We do this thing called Letterboxd, and it's where we rate movies and give them stars and hearts to see if we like them and to allow ourselves and our opinions on movies to be judged by others. What are you going to do with this movie? How has it, I mean, you liked it better than before. How is that going to be reflected in your stars and hearts?
I think that I'm torn on this one. Is it a 3 or a 3.5 is kind of where I'm sitting. I think I'm going to say 3.5 and a heart is, I think, where I'm going to land.
That's good. What was it before?
I don't know. It was before I was doing this. If I had to guess, I probably would say 2. Like I'm not exactly sure. Yeah.
Because I'm a ratings relativist, I have to go check real quick. What did I do for Priscilla? I think it was a 5-star.
Were we doing star ratings? I don't think we were doing star ratings at that time.
We might not have done that.
That was when we were just flick charting stuff.
Boy, those were the days, right?
Yeah.
In my Letterboxd, oh no, I have Priscilla as a 4-star and a heart. Okay, I'm going to go with 4 stars and a heart for Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yeah.
That feels like a really good place for this. It's a great movie, and it is a great movie. It also is a fun movie to revisit in this time in our sort of cultural landscape. Yes, could it become a 5-star in another 20 years? I don't know. Maybe. 4 stars and a heart. That's where it sits.
Well, that will land it at 3 3/4 and a heart. As we average it out, it'll round up to 4 stars over in our account on Letterboxd at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright. So what did you think about Hedwig and the Angry Inch? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in a Discord community where we're going to be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
All right. So mine's a little bit long. It's not, I mean, it's a paragraph.
Okay.
All right.
Mine is super short, so do yours first.
This is from Todd. It's 4 stars, and it opens with that fantastic quote, "Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal savior?" No, but I admire his work. Okay. Hedwig's an incredibly depressing story told in an upbeat music format, and it's fantastic. If production value and acting had been better, I believe this is close to a perfect movie. The music is really fantastic, and the stakes of the film say a lot about depression, human isolation, and general paths to happiness. The film leaves you with a lot to think about, which is what good movies should do, recommended to all. Depressing movie with an upbeat musical soundtrack. What do you got?
Love it. I have 3 star and a heart by James, who says, "I now know bras can't go in the dryer." See, they're also educational.
That was an awesome bit. It's very educational. Thanks, Letterboxd.